Hello. How is everybody doing? Want to make sure everyone can hear me. We had some mic trouble before. Can everybody hear me out there? I hope everyone can hear me. Oh, it's all good. All right, everyone. Hello, everyone. It's Leo. Once again, welcome to the Leo Show. Today, we are going to be looking at one of my least favorite but most admired politicians. As you guys know from my previous Zohran videos, I'm not a huge fan. Okay? I don't like the policies. I don't like this DSA stuff. But, he's a great ad man. He makes great ads. The stream last night, we covered that. I'll make some videos about it soon, too. His ads are some of the best I've seen in politics ever. So, I don't want you guys to think that I'm grifting you or that I'm using his name to, farm engagement or views. No, I'm covering this man because he's very important. Because this race in New York is the most important political race in this country. And it's because the Republican has no shot of winning. So what we get to see here is a whole showdown between the DSA and between the establishment Democrats. Okay? And this is important because this will determine national the way things go. That's why I think even if you're not a fan like me of Zohran, it's good to tune in. I've been following this race pretty closely. Even though I don't live in New York, don't really like New York. I'm a Miami guy, born and raised. But New York is an important city, and it has all this going on. So what did I see Zohran do today? What did I see him do today? I saw him do an interview with the Breakfast Club. As you saw in my title, I called it a big mistake. I watched half of it, and I didn't like it, okay? But, maybe that's a bit of an exaggeration. I just think that we can learn a lot from this interview about how the DSA Bernie Sanders camp is dealing with its position, because they're in a very fortunate position. Zohran is in a very fortunate position right now. The Democrats are at their lowest approval ever. It is the oldest political party on the planet, not just the U.S., the whole planet. And I think anyone can tell you that it's garbage now, that it sucks, that the people involved with it are terrible, that they're dumb, that they don't know what they're doing. Except for possibly the DSA wing, the Bernie Sanders wing. Maybe. This is what this election is all about. So what I wanted to do for this stream is let's keep it simple. I just want to be with you guys here. And I want to analyze this interview. I want to analyze what Zohran's saying, his rhetoric, and whether you guys think, or I think, that he can really usurp the Democratic Party. Something that David Hogg, who I hate, Zohran, I don't like, but it's David Hogg, I hate you. I hate you, David Hogg. David Hogg, you're so ugly.
You're so damned ugly.
You're an ugly little brat who got pushed out of the Democratic Party because you couldn't keep it in your pants. Because you're a weirdo. I don't mean that literally. I mean that he could not actually do anything. He was not an effective leader. Never has been. Watch my first stream. I covered that. It's not rehash stuff. So, can Zohran take over the Democratic Party? Does he have the guts?
You don't have the guts to be what you want to be.
I think he might. And let's see what he has to say in this interview. So let's start from the beginning. Let's analyze this together. I'm interested in this. I told you guys there's value in this. Let's watch.
Wake that ass up. Early in the morning. The Breakfast Club.
Morning, everybody. It's DJ NV, Just Hilarious, Charlemagne the Guy. We are the Breakfast Club. We got a special guest in the building.
Before we begin, I'll just say I hate Charlemagne the God a lot. I think that he's a terrible grifter, maybe. I'm not sure. But he's not a good guy. He shields for the establishment even though he shouldn't. Doesn't have to. And I just don't like him. I don't like him. So, obviously, I'm going to be biased towards Zohran here. Let's go.
Building. He's running for mayor of New York City. We have Zohran Kwame Mamdani.
Nailed it.
Hey,
Nailed it.
There we go. There we
See,
go.
That's that.
You gave him a great tutorial right before we started. Absolutely.
And I'll take it.
If you don't know, ask.
That's right. That's what I do.
I was going to say it was off the top of the dome, but
Now,
we can say
I
it's a
did
tutorial.
see your
This
video. Before we get into politics, I did see your video. You are a rapper.
You got a bop. You got a bop.
This smile here, I love it because it's Gavin Newsom level sociopathy. I love it. I think it's actually very genuine in the way it comes off. I love it. I love it. I think he carries himself extremely well. The suit's very good. Can't tell. I don't think that's an Apple Watch, which already puts him. I love when these politicians wear suits. I love it. I hate when they take off their ties, even though this is like a tweed. It's a great suit. It's a great suit. I bet it costs like $2,000. It's a nice suit. Ties matching, groomed, very good. As I said, on aesthetics, excellent guy. And they're going to talk about his rap video, which we saw on the stream yesterday, which I don't think he should be embarrassed of. I think it was very well directed, and it informs how good his ads are now. So let's continue.
I was in a...
Audio says like Zelensky. Haha. Yes. Zelensky does not wear suits. But Zohran does. He understands the power of image. Something that Democrats have forgotten. Image is important. Fetterman.
Aspiring rapper.
Nobody will vote for you based off what I heard in that rap. Okay?
And that's why I'm not a rapper anymore.
Based off the quality of that rap, nobody will vote for you.
To be the mayor, you have to know what you know and know what you don't know.
Got you.
And I learned quickly what I didn't know.
You really wanted to like pursue a rap career at one point?
There was a point. I mean, it was at the level. So I was born in Kampala, Uganda, in East Africa. And there was a point where there was a guy I grew up with. He's like my brother. The two of us were rapping together. And I was trying to sell mixtapes on a public bus, which doesn't leave until it fills every single one of the 14 seats. Mm-hmm. That's how much we were trying.
Wow.
And here I am, because it didn't really work out all that well.
It was kind of like yin-yang twins.
This is an important point. I don't think he should have said that, because I think a lot of Americans are realizing, like he has, that one of the last great industries to get rich in this country is politics. And that's kind of what he's doing. And that's fine. But you shouldn't say that out loud. I mean, I might run for office, man. It's a great little grift. It's a great grift. So, a little too transparent, but let's continue. You know, so far, very amiable, very personable, comes off very good to the audience.
I like the
I heard him.
I like the beat.
Was there an inspiration for you, the Yin Yang Twins, the Whisper song?
I have to say that was an inspiration for the song I made called Nani.
Yeah.
But I think, for me, it was also a way of just telling the different stories of what I grew up with.
Gotcha.
And especially in Kampala, I'm Ugandan of Indian origin. The guy that I grew up with, his name is Abdul. He is Ugandan by way of South Sudan. It's all these different cultures coming together. We were trying to mix it all in. And then when I was here in New York City, just trying to kind of, the song that I made was a testament to my grandmother.
Gotcha.
And how she's a real badass. And how so often when we talk about our elders, we put them in a box of a nice, gentle person who, is very much constrained in how we imagine them. And I wanted to just be a little more absurd in the celebration of a woman who gave me a sense of the world and was a social worker and should be a little more celebrated.
And disciplined you.
Love that.
And disciplined you.
A few slaps in Jackson Heights hurt nobody.
Oh, you got slapped?
In the video,
You got old school discipline.
Yeah.
That's what's up.
In that video, not by my grandmother.
So question, in real life, when you do make the pivot to, do what it is you're doing now, do you say to yourself, all right, scrub all that shit off the internet. We got to get rid of that.
No, because I think that it's about being a real person.
Great response there. Great response. It's a good video. Check it out. We saw it on the stream last night. It's a good video. It's nothing to be ashamed of. It's a very good video. I wish that there was more authenticity like this. If you're not of the right, you might not have followed this guy. Maybe you have. His name's Sabatini from Florida. He's out of office now, but he had a scandal where in his youth he put up blackface, right? He didn't say scrub it. He didn't apologize for it. And that's the same thing that he's doing here, which I like. We are complete, flawed human beings, and we should not be ashamed of our past. It informs us.
I enjoyed that time in my life, and ultimately I actually see a through line between that work and this work in that you're trying to tell a story.
Gotcha.
And, when you're trying to sell a mixtape or you're trying to get somebody's signature to get on the ballot at 6:30 in the morning, at the Broadway stop of the NW in Astoria, it's the same thing where you're asking someone, can I have a moment of your time to tell you about my story or our story? And it also means learning how to deal with rejection very quickly.
Got you.
Because once you've tried to be an artist, once you tried to be a rapper, you know what it means to be humbled.
Yeah.
One of the reasons this guy's communication is this good is exactly what he said. We can tell this guy would be a great salesman. He's a great salesman. He's great at it. This is an acquired skill. And whether you're in the arts or you learned it through some other way, it applies to life and everything. Everything's a sale, especially politics. So, great response. Great response. Great. I'm sure he's aware of this. I'm sure he has some metacognition about it.
On a regular basis, right? Like, you know what it means to be the opener to the opener to the opener to the opener to the opener. And I think too often in politics, there's a real sense of self as if people should be excited to see you, when in fact you should be excited to see them, right? We shouldn't be lecturing people as much as we should actually be listening to them.
Right.
And I think that, you know, struggling through being an artist, it was very helpful in learning that.
I thank God nobody told you to use any of that hip hop stuff for your campaign. That's what they do. This is how you reach certain demographics. They're like, please, I thank God they didn't tell you to do that.
Don't worry, it's not coming.
Now, how'd you get into politics? What got you into politics? Because some of your policies that you want, that we'll discuss, I don't see happening, but I love it. So let's start how you got into politics at first.
So the first time I knocked on doors was in 2008 for Obama. The first time I knocked on doors in New York City was when I picked up a copy of The Village Voice and I saw that one of my favorite rappers, Heems, had endorsed his childhood friend for city council. And I was like, oh, this guy would be the first South Asian elected official in New York City. His name was Ali Najmi. And so I got on the F train, I went to 169th, and I knocked on doors for Ali. And that was the...
I think it's important to pause and consider something here, which is that we have to be honest, the Obama administration was a complete and total failure. If you liked it at the time, don't be embarrassed. A lot of people did. Obama was a total failure. He has no legacy in this country. He was one of the worst presidents this country has had. Unfortunately, George Bush was so much worse that Obama does not get the credit for being so bad. But we see the through line of a failed Obama presidency into the rise of the DSA types, like himself, like Zohran. So it's important to consider how Obama left this country so shambled and so terrible that we now have the rise of the DSA. We really do have this. I thought this movement was dead after Hillary Clinton in 2016, but it's not. Obama was a total failure. And it's about time people be honest about it and say it. Because you can't say that about a lot of presidents. Total failures, George Bush, Obama. Man, it's tough to think of more. It's tough to think of more because total failure is really hard to pull off in politics. And we now know that there is a segment of the left, the DSA, and they are not happy with this. I will be right back. We have lost our battery. 1 second. And we're back. You know why that happens to me?
Because I'm fucking stupid.
Let's continue.
The moment where I started to get involved in local politics. I joined a club called the Muslim Democratic Club in New York. And then in 2017, I worked on my first race. That was for a Palestinian Lutheran minister in Bay Ridge called Khadr El Yatim. And that just changed my life because, you know, I moved to this city when I was 7. This is the city I fell in love with, the city where I got my citizenship, where I got married. And yet there was also a point where I knew I was a New Yorker. I didn't know if I had a place in New York City politics. I thought those two things were separate. And then there was this campaign which showed me that there was room for all of us. And you didn't actually have to give up any of yourself to be a part of it. And that inspired me to understand that politics isn't just something that you believe in. It's also something that you do as an active thing. And from there, I kept working on campaigns. And then in 2020, I ran for the state assembly, and now I represent Astoria in Long Island City.
I think it's important to mention this is part of the old anarchist tradition. The propaganda of the deed is what he is describing. The propaganda of the deed is to know that the best form of influence on society is to actually do, not to campaign. I guess in the anarchists it's different. It's not to campaign, it's not to participate in politics. But here we have a variation of the propaganda of the deed with some Alinskyism, okay? What we have here is a man who realized, like he says, that politics is done. It's not something you participate in. And, of course, propaganda of the deed was violent. But this is not violent. This is just, in a lot of ways, it's very similar to the realization that the Muslim Brotherhood had in Egypt, right? Or all across the Arab world. That Islamism is easy to come in with democracy, with elections. I'm not calling Zohran that. I'm not calling that. I'm just saying the strategy is very similar. The DSA strategy seems to be like, we can get in office. We can participate in it, which is a lot smarter than just voting your way out of it, which you can't because Obama failed. Mr. Frank M. says we call it praxis. That is correct. Praxis.
Wow. You know, the USA the USA Today asked a question, and the question is simple. Can an AOC-backed socialist upset Andrew Cuomo in the New York City's mayor race? I want you to answer that question.
There's a short answer, which is yes.
Okay.
And there's a longer answer, which is the fact that New Yorkers are hungry for a different kind of politics.
Mm-hmm.
We have seen the same politicians with the same ideas lead us to the same results for decades. And this is in many ways a question of whether we want to go back to the past or whether we want to go to the future.
Mm-hmm.
And our campaign is one that sees this city under attack in two ways. An affordability crisis on the inside. We're the most expensive city in the United States of America. 1 in 4 New Yorkers are living in poverty. The rest are living in a permanent state of anxiety about whether they can keep affording this city. And then we're under attack from the outside from a Trump administration that is held.
Now, I think there's something very important to note here. By the way, Frank, I missed some of your chats. I think Zohran would disagree. I don't think you would disagree either. I think most people know Obama is a failure, like you're saying. And his failures led to Trump. That is inarguable. That is correct. Now, what was I going to say? Oh, excellent. So, I think that in the Democratic Party, there is a problem that they're having, which is that they cannot admit the mistakes of the COVID era, unfortunately. I think that it would require some really deep self-reflection. Doesn't matter which side you fall on this issue. We can all agree, I think at this point, that printing 1/5 of the money in existence was a bad idea. It has led to distress conditions for everyone. Everyone knows this. But there is no self-reflection on it. And I think that that's a problem. So I've noticed that Zohran is kind of an avatar for attacking the people that did that to people. So attacking Andrew Cuomo. Andrew Cuomo was responsible for mass murder. Andrew Cuomo was a mass murderer. He killed a bunch of old people. That's what he did. That's literally true. If you don't believe me, look it up. He participated in a mass murder. That's what Andrew Cuomo did. In any sane country, Andrew Cuomo would be in prison for doing this. Andrew Cuomo robbed people of their lives. Bill de Blasio is responsible as well. And now there is no way of attacking him that he's running again because they still have this arrogance other than putting up a candidate who is different. I just wish that Democrats would admit that that old guard was just bad because of COVID, because it led to all these distress conditions people are living in. It'd be a great wipe off and people would have a lot more respect of the brand. But that's definitely, I think, what is behind Zohran's support is an anger at the COVID policies that were largely done by the Democratic Party at the national scale, the Democratic establishment. And dude, ask any poor person. I remember I was in New York 2 years ago and I was going to a bar and I talked to the bouncer outside, an older Black American guy. And we were talking about Trump. No, my friend was. He told me this afterwards. And he was saying, man, I didn't like him. But I have to admit, my money was so good. And I'm sure that guy's not a Republican. I mean, I'm not a Republican, right? But that is an implicit admittance that what was done during COVID was wrong. And I feel for you guys in New York and California. I know it was bad up there. In Florida, it was pretty bad, but it wasn't that bad. So let's continue here.
Bent on going after not only New Yorkers, but frankly, democratic cities across the country, like we're seeing in Los Angeles right now. And I am going head to head with Andrew Cuomo, a former governor who's the son of a former governor, whose super PAC is funded in large part by the same billionaires who put Donald Trump back in the White House. That's not the kind of person who can stand up to authoritarianism without seeing a reflection of themselves. We need someone who will actually fight both of these crises at the same time. And that's why I believe that I can win. And I'm so excited to have Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez's endorsement in doing that.
I wanted to ask, some of the
And the Democrats, what he's saying there, mentioning AOC, is very good. The Democrats are the biggest idiots in terms of having opposed Trump in the first term because they empowered the squad. AOC, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar. And I knew at the time that they were going to regret this. But they saw it as a very easy way to just get more opposition towards Trump. You may like the squad, you may dislike. I'm speaking from the form of the Democratic establishment. Nancy Pelosi posed with them in a magazine. She's an idiot. Why would she do that? She empowered them. And now they are running the party to an extent. I think they probably have 20% control over the party, mostly at the base level, not at the establishment level. But when you don't put down AOC, when you don't put down Bernie, you get Zohran. That's what you get. If the Democrats didn't want that, they should have thought about it. But they were so zealous about the Trump administration in the first term that this is what they did to their party. Maybe it's for the better. It'd be kind of cool to have a social democratic party in the U.S. It'd be better than the Democratic Party we have now. What does the Democratic Party now have to offer to anyone? Democratic Party, who votes for the Democratic Party now? Rich people? Dastardly Derek says, good, the dinosaurs can rest. Dastardly Derek, I completely agree with you. I hate Nancy Pelosi. Did you know Nancy Pelosi has a daughter? And she's a filmmaker and her movies are all terrible? Look it up. But she gets contracts with HBO because these people are evil. So, Derek, I agree with you. I'm not sure I like the new DSA wing, but I can tell you for sure that these dinosaurs, as you call them, are the worst. And they deserve to be pushed out. They're rats.
Good morning, rat.
And they need to be pushed out. Let's let one out here for the demise of the Democratic establishment. All right. Let's continue.
Policies that you stand on is free bus service in New York City.
Yes, sir.
Could that actually work?
Absolutely.
Break it down.
So I grew up in Morningside Heights. I would take the 1 train. We used to have the 9 train back then, but I would take the 1 train to 231st, get on the BX10 to go to Bronx Science. Mm-hmm. And I remember when I'd get off the 1 train, if I could still see the bus, even if it was 2 stops away, even if I had missed it, I knew I could catch up to it.
Of course.
Because that's how slow that bus was. I'd be slapping the back of the bus and I could get there in time. It was good for me. It's bad for New York City. You should not be able to catch that bus if you miss that bus. But the buses are so slow. So as a state assembly member, I won the first of its kind fare free bus pilot. We made 1 bus route free in every borough of New York City. And we secured $15 million to do so. And it showed that ridership went up by up to 38%. Assaults on bus drivers went down by 38.9%. And of the largest increase of riders came from New Yorkers making $28,000 a year or less. And this is critical because it's not just about economic access. It's also about public safety. It's also even about environmentalism because we're seeing that 11% of the new riders, they were previously driving a car or taking a taxi. Now they're off the road. They're on public transit. And the cost of doing all of this is about $700 million a year. Now, that sounds significant, which it is, but just want to put it into context. We're talking about that in the context of a city budget that's about $113 billion a year. State budget, about $252 billion a year. There is money. The question is what we spend it on. And what I've proposed is that we raise $10 billion to pay for our entire economic agenda and start to Trump-proof our city because we know he'll use federal funding as leverage over this city. And we will do so in 2 key ways. The first is to match the state's top corporate tax rate to that.
First, this is bad strategy in my opinion. Do not alienate Trump. You can work with him. He's not going to go full Gerald Ford, New York City drop dead. He's from New York. He wants that city to do well. Bad thing to do. He's been doing that throughout the campaign. I don't like that. I don't think it's good. But in regards to these free buses, I think this is a scam. He's really selling me on it. I like the idea of it. Look, 700 billion? Is that what he said? No, 700 million. It has to be 700 million. Yeah, 700 million. That makes a lot of sense. Look, if it actually works, it's not a bad spend of 700 million at the local level. In Miami, we have this stupid decorative bridge they're building. Do you know how much money they're spending on this dumb bridge? $900 million. It doesn't even take you anywhere.
That's a lot of money, man. That's a lot of fucking money.
That's ridiculous. So, I don't believe him. I don't think this can happen. I think it's a ploy. They're raising $10 billion to stiff you guys with more taxes. But, hey, if it works, it works. Okay? I don't see why you need this model. The buses in the Netherlands work amazing, and you have to pay for them. But they're cheap. You should always get some sort of revenue. Why not? But that's just the case. That's just the case. I don't like it, but hey, analyzing his way he's selling it, it's a very good sell.
Out of New Jersey. We are at 7.25%. They're at 11.5%. Corporations can pay it over there. They can pay it over here. And the beauty...
Derek says congestion in NYC is insane. They need to prioritize public transit. I am biased against public transit just because I am from Miami and it's always been a scam down here. But you're right. Maybe you're right. Maybe you're right. I've heard some proposal about privatizing the MTA. They sound interesting. I'm not a libertarian, but they sound interesting. But I think you're right. I think that New York is a place that actually uses public transit. So I get it. I get that position. Raising the corporate tax rate, this is scary. He shouldn't say this, man. Dude, look, this is what frustrates me about the DSA wing, is just say whatever you need to get in power. Say whatever. Principles are for the plebeian. Dude, they all lie. You might as well lie to get corporate donors. Just lie and then stiff them. What are they going to do? They're going to take you out? They're not going to do that. And if they do, you're a hero. Okay? I'm not advocating it, but it's just a reality. Lie. Lie to win and then do your agenda. Why is he being so honest? Lie. Don't tell them you're raising taxes. Say you're going to lower it because Laffer curve and we're going to get more money in the end. Just lie. I don't like that. Derek says based. Thank you, Derek. Always do whatever you need to get power. Don't do what you think you need to do. Do what works. Lie, cheat, steal. That's how everything has been done in this country. Derek says take the money and run. Take the money and run, man. Take the money and run.
The beauty of it is that it doesn't just apply to corporations headquartered in New York City. Because when you say this, people will say, well, they're going to go to Florida. Mm-hmm. Wherever you are headquartered, as long as you do business in the state of New York, you are taxable for that corporate tax. We're talking about corporations that are making millions of dollars, not in revenue, but in profit. And the second is taxing the top 1% of New Yorkers. We're talking about people who make $1 million a year or more, taxing them just by a flat 2% tax increase. And I know if 50 Cent is listening, he's not going to be happy about this. Mm-hmm. He tends to not like this tax policy, but I want to be very clear. This is about $20,000 a year. It's a rounding error. And all of these things together, they make every New Yorker's life better, including those who are actually getting taxed.
Now, you also want to cut the police budget, and people are upset about that, right? They feel like crime is all over the place. I think a couple of days ago, 2 people got shot in Times Square. The other day, I think another girl got shot in the face in the Bronx. So people are very scared. It seems like New York is getting worse than getting better. So what do you say that, at a time like this, cutting the police budgets, that seems like that is taking more police officers off the street?
I want to be very clear. We are not defunding the police. What we are talking about is sustaining the number of police that we have within the police department. And when I talk...
This is an aside on the police issue. There's a Russian anecdote, I think that's what they call them, and that basically they say that police are always the dumbest people in society. I have never seen that more true than with NYPD. They are the dumbest cops in this country. I've said it before, I'll say it again. They are so dumb. I don't think that there's any way of fixing the NYPD. I think you need to disband them and do something else. NYPD is not going to improve. And Miami cops are bad. But NYPD, to me, were the dumbest cops I've dealt with in my life. I don't like police, so I'm biased against them. But I can recognize when a cop is smart. In Chile, the cops are smart because it's military. Okay? In Italy, they're military as well. It's not military. It's a gendarmerie. It's a little different. But NYPD is the stupidest police force that exists. You should not... They cannot solve crimes because they are not smart enough to solve crimes. That's my take on them. So this idea of money fixing things, it's not going to happen, man. NYPD is bad. I got shoved by NYPD. I should have fallen to sue, but I didn't. for no reason. They just pushed me over. I was just in the park. I think it was I forgot what park it was. It was the one where they did that riot because some kid was giving away a PlayStation. I was there. I was just watching, and this cop just pushes me. That's never happened to me before anywhere else in the world. Chinese cops are excellent. But let's continue.
Talk to those police officers themselves. They tell me they signed up to join the police force to tackle serious crimes. And yet what they're being asked to do today is serve as mental health professionals and social workers. The same officers who thought they'd be responding to shootings are picking up the 200,000 phone calls a year of mental health.
This is the problem, is that it's not just that. NYPD had one of the worst incidents was Eric Garner. I didn't like the BLM movement, okay? I thought Zimmerman should have got off, even though it was an ugly shooting. Eric Garner was a travesty, and that's on Bloomberg and the NYPD. That was disgusting. You can't take those same cops and fix stuff. Derek says, give morons irads. What can go wrong? I think you mean like money, right? Give morons money. What can go wrong? What can go wrong? Dude, imagine an NYPD with a tank. That tank would just tear down half the city because they wouldn't know how to drive it. They're that stupid. I'm telling you, they're dumb. I don't know if they were always that dumb, but man, they're giving morons money. Imagine giving them a tank or something. God, dude, that'd be terrible. Because at least LAPD, they're pretty bad, but LAPD uses the money effectively with the helicopters. It's a little excessive, but the helicopters are somewhat useful. But giving NYPD money, I would not trust NYPD with 50 cents, man.
Health calls. And what we've seen elsewhere in the country is you can actually move mental health calls out of the police department. That can reduce the calls that police have to deal with by 20%. And in doing so, you can increase police response time to those major categories of crime. And I think that's important because police have a critical role to play in public safety. And we also need to ask them to just focus on their job and not ask them to do every job. Because what we're seeing right now is these same politicians who have given us this lack of public safety over so many years telling...
I completely agree with that take on police. That has been my take since I was a kid because I'm half Chilean. I've seen what military police does. When you have military as police, it is the best system possible. Because when you have a gendarmerie, as it's called, these guys are only looking for like violent stuff. That's their only command. So they don't mess with you for selling loose cigarettes because it's not their job. It's stupid. It's stupid to have cops in the way that they exist in America. Cops don't make sense. Okay? I may sound like a radical because I don't believe in cops or prisons, but I'm telling you, it just doesn't make any sense. Just get some military guys and make them look out for violence. And then, like he says, you can have mental health people, you can have unarmed local level people, maybe like a British type thing to respond to stuff. But I find that most of the times, if you only have cops doing this, it reduces tension. And when it reduces tension, people tend to solve out their own problems. But when you have like a militant style police force, it's the best of all worlds, in my opinion. They don't fear you because they're military. They're only scared of military threats. And they tend to be pretty cool guys. And they're actually proud of their job. Go to Italy, go to Chile, you'll see it. I promise.
Telling us that their only answer, no matter the question, is to ask police to do more. I want them to do the thing that they signed up for and to have a Department of Community Safety with teams of dedicated mental health outreach workers at the top 100 stations with the highest levels of mental health crisis and homelessness. We have to deliver public safety.
And when those calls come in, and people are saying, hey, somebody's over here having an episode, the police, I think, should be going out there with the mental health professional. Let the mental health professional be the person who tries to diffuse that situation.
Backing them up.
And, even if you want, I think I can't tell you how to say things, but
no, please.
If the NYPD got a budget of $10.8 billion, does all of that really need to go to the police? They're already super underpaid, so where's that money going anyway? So why not take some of that money and invest it into other alternatives to respond to things like mental health crisis?
And that's what I've said, which is that we have to work backwards from, does every dollar we spend go towards public safety? The critiques that I've said of the NYPD have been that they don't need an 80-person communications department. That doesn't actually deliver public safety. That delivers us drone footage, right? We can actually rapidly downsize that. And I've been heartened to see the current commissioner took that 80 and made it 40. And I've also said that we don't need to have a more than $1 billion police overtime budget. And usually when you say that, people frame it as if you are going after the police. But when you ask the police, There are 200 officers leaving the department every month. And one of the leading causes is forced overtime because of quality of life. They don't know when they're going home. They're working doubles and triples. This is actually something that can make it easier to do that job and ensure that we're actually responding to this, because what we have right now is not working. You know, I sat with the family of a New Yorker named Win Rosario, who's a young New Yorker who was going through a mental health crisis. He called 911 himself, asking for help. 2 police officers who were trained in mental health assistance were dispatched to his home, and they killed him within 3 minutes on camera in front of his mother and his brother.
So they were trained in mental health?
They were trained. And my point here is that serves no one. That family grieves him every single day, and we all know that was not the way to respond to this. So why don't we actually look at what works elsewhere in the country and bring it here? And that's what we're talking about, evidence-based policy solutions that will deliver real public safety.
Hold on, maybe we stepping on our own point. If they were trained, when you say trained in mental health, what, they were trained to know how to respond to people dealing with crisis?
These police officers were given the training that right now we're being told is sufficient. Mm-hmm. And my point here is that we should not be training police officers for mental health response. We should have mental health responders be the ones who are actually the ones there.
Gotcha.
And this addiction to asking them to do everything, it's one that leaves them unable to do many things. Because right now, as you were saying, New Yorkers, when they're worried about safety, they want to know, what's your plan? 65% of crimes from the first quarter of this year are currently unresolved. That's partially because we're asking the police to do everything.
I get what you're saying.
So
you know what else?
Now you know, if you want to go do a crime, go do it in New York. You're not going to get caught. 65% chance you're not going to get caught. Dude, it's not Mexico level. I think in Mexico, the internal numbers are 90% don't get solved. Dude, I don't know how New York is still floating along. That's crazy. 65% unsolved. I'm sure he's not lying about that. I'm sure that's a real number. 65% in a first world country is crazy, man.
Police officers should be having their own mental health evaluations. Like, that should be part of the.
It's important, and I think that's also part of why when you ask an officer to work triples, right? The longer you are on your shift, the harder it is to make the same level of decisions throughout the entirety of it. We need to ensure that we are creating the conditions where we can actually deliver that public safety.
I want to ask about congestion pricing as well. You talk about free buses, which sounds great. But now you got free buses, but then when you drive to the city, you charge me $30 to get to the city. So what's your thoughts on congestion pricing and how it's affecting businesses in New York?
So I believe that the one thing New Yorkers hate more than a politician they disagree with is one they can't trust. So I'm going to tell you the answer I say in every room. Mm-hmm. I am somebody who has supported congestion pricing.
Oh.
I know. I wanted to tell you the truth.
Jesus.
I want to say it to your face, though. I've supported it for a few reasons. Because I believed it would reduce congestion. It would increase.
I don't think he should have said support. Again, just lie. Congestion pricing sounds bad. I bet you that was thought up in a think tank, and it was focus grouped, and they know it sounds bad. I'm not opposed to it either. I actually think it's kind of cool. New York needs to be more walkable and more drivable too. I thought congestion pricing was going to fail entirely. I thought it was going to become the new price floor, and people were just going to go anyway. But it seems to have worked. And it's nice to have a city you can walk around with. Some things are not about the money, even though it's obviously about the money here, because they're probably making a boatload of money with congestion pricing. But I like a walkable city, man. If we had congestion pricing, no, I'm not even going to say that. If we had congestion pricing in Miami. I don't want to give them that idea. Ugh, that'd be terrible. Never mind. I hate congestion pricing.
Increase bus speeds, it would raise revenue for the MTA, and it would improve air quality. And that's what we've seen it be able to do. At the same time, I have always believed it needs to be paired with immediate public transit improvements. I launched a campaign called Get Congestion Pricing Right with the Deputy Majority Leader of the State Senate, Mike Gianaris. The two of us won about $12 million in new bus service. I'm proud of it, but it's not enough. And the reason I fought for that is when you look at the implementation of congestion pricing in places like Stockholm, London, the first day they had increased public transit. Because I think it's important to tell New Yorkers that it's not just about raising revenue for public transit. It's also about giving them a better option.
The thing he's leaving out is that Stockholm's congestion pricing is actually really smart. It's variable. And it's really well done. If you ever read about it, they actually just raise it depending on the amount of traffic. It's not just you're paying this after this time. It's there's a lot of traffic here. Let's raise the total to 75 cents instead of 25 cents. That's what I think a lot of people got rubbed the wrong way about the New York one. The New York one was very stupidly done.
Option right there. There are some people who need to drive. There are also others for whom that's the most convenient option. We need to make public transit the most convenient one, but it's hard when you look at your app and you're told a bus is coming in 10 minutes and then you wait 10 minutes and then that bus doesn't actually show up. And so we need to earn that trust. That's where my position is.
How is it affecting businesses in New York City, though? I mean, I know a lot of restaurants are charging a congestion fee tax, and, prices are, everything is expensive. I mean, the other day I went to McDonald's. I got my kids one meal, and that one meal is usually $2.99. When I was a kid, it's now $12.
You bought all your kids one meal times that hard?
Yeah, absolutely. They got to split it up. We got to split it up. That's how it's expensive out there.
That's
Jesus
crazy.
Christ.
Hey, you want to let me some? But
That's
so,
crazy.
So how is it affecting business? Especially small businesses. The main businesses, they can get over. But you got that mom and pop store that just can't do it.
What we've actually seen is that since it's been implemented, foot traffic has increased in the central business district. And I think that's a big part of it, is that actually when you make it easier to...
I buy that congestion pricing has led to more foot traffic for small stores. That's really good, especially in a time where retail is in crisis. Derek says we need isolated pedestrian districts like Barcelona. I've been to Barcelona. I don't love it. But maybe. I think that largely in America, they need to build things better in the sense of more dense if you're going to have a city where you don't even really have to build this isolated thing, because it's going to be more convenient to walk regardless, That's what I'd like to see. Something where it's not even something where you have to nudge people. The famous book Nudge, very evil book. But, if people can just make the choice because they actually find it more convenient to walk, that's a good idea. I don't know if making it isolated, making it an actual thing of policy is the right way, but I definitely think that it should be that walking is a choice, except for, no, I won't even say that. In the South, you could do it too. You just need, it's really hot. So you need to build tall buildings. Coral Gables in Miami is a very walkable area. Don't tell people. Coral Gables is very nice. Our cities sprawl out because of zoning. Derek says, yeah. Zoning is a pain. I don't know, dude. What really bothers me about the U.S. is that I think a lot of these problems are baked in and you can't really fix them, because if you wanted to fix Miami, for example, you literally have to raise the city and rebuild it outside of Coral Gables, because the sprawl is just there and it's there to stay. It's like a mini park in every district. Parks are good, but for parks, you need things to be safe. And every park in South Florida, at least, I saw it in New York too, is full of unsafety. It's bad. You know who does it well? Shanghai. Shanghai is really nice, Derek. Recommend you check it out. Very walkable, very safe. It's kind of like 1984 because there's cameras everywhere, but it works. So yeah, I think it's a complicated issue. I don't know how you get back to a walking society, especially since people are so used to cars. I like cars too, but I wish you had the option, right, dude? And you know how bad it's so bad in America, in Miami specifically, that I had a friend who came from Cuba. I'm not Cuban. Again, people keep accusing me of being that. Last year or 2 years ago, and he wanted to do a job interview. He lived in the West Kendall. He wanted to do one in Hialeah, and he was like, I'll take the bus. And I was like, bro, that's going to be an hour and a half. And he was like, no way. And they looked it up. It was an hour and a half. I was like, holy, yeah, I told you, man. I told you it was going to be bad. And he ended up getting an Uber. And that can't stand. Even someone who's from a third world country like Cuba sees the problem immediately upon arriving.
Get around that same neighborhood, you actually can facilitate more business. And an interesting thing that I've also seen is that noise complaints are down by a significant amount because you have reduced congestion. And that's a difference also in quality of life. But I think to your point, small businesses. Mm-hmm. Small businesses are struggling in New York City. They employ a majority of all New Yorkers who are working in the private sector. We put forward a small business proposal where we would cut fines and fees for those businesses by 50% across.
I hate this. Just get rid of the fines and fees. Fine Walmart. Fine Target. Fine the big guys. Why do you fine the small businesses at all? Audio says, yeah, Miami's a nightmare. There's no fixing it. There is no fixing it. It's over for Miami. It's over. But yeah, just get rid of the fines on small businesses, man. Why do you even have them? 50%, dude, just cut them. Just cut them, because if the fines were working, then there would be no discussion about them being cut. So they're clearly not doing what they have to do with these fines. These fines are a waste of money, of other people's money. And unless you want New York, this is the way the whole country is going to be, Walmart, Dollar Tree, and Target or something, then you need to cut these and you need to penalize the big guys. But the big guys are in with the government, right? Derek says our transit system in the U.S. are not integrated together. Yeah, that's actually a very good point. I hadn't even really thought of it that way. In Miami, at least, the metro rail, if you want to get on it from where I'm at, you need to get on a bus that is 50 minutes to the metro rail. It's not integrated at all. It's like they built parts of it and then they built around it. It makes no sense. I don't know why you would do that. I guess maybe it's because it's more land than in Europe or something. But I don't know, man. Like, that is true. They don't integrate well. Like, they don't lock in together very well. I don't know. You know, I think that one of the solutions to this transit problem is actually to have like a lot of competing small private bus companies. This is what they do in like Peru and other third world countries. They work pretty well. In Chile, we have, I'm sure it still exists, a system where they're called colectivos, and it's like a taxi that's kind of like an Uber pool, and it works really well. It's not as walkable as anywhere else, but it works, you know. I guess they're not more integrated, but they're more efficient, and they're private, and they're super cheap. They're super cheap, man, and they work. I know lefties don't like to hear private stuff, but I'm telling you, it's super cheap. Like, you want the bus in Peru to do a 30-minute route. First of all, that 30-minute route in America is going to be like 2 minutes there because they're driving crazy because they want to get people on the bus, man. They want to get them on the bus. And then it's like $1 because it's a volume business. It's more people. And it works. Derek says automotive lobbying. Absolutely, automotive lobbying. The dealerships are a pain, a thorn in the side of American business, American politics. The automotive business and particularly the dealers. The dealers are so bad, man. They really do mess up who you can elect. I'm telling you, man. And dude, I have stories about dealers. A lot of these dealers are shady people. There's a dealer down here in Miami who made his money in the 80s, if you know what I mean. I can't say more than that. But these dealers, man, yeah, they're definitely shady people, Derek, and they lobby a lot.
The board. And we would do that because, you know, the city has a $113 billion budget. It is not funded through these fines and fees. It doesn't mean that much to the city if it gets $100 from a restaurant because they have a refrigerator every year. Mm-hmm. But for that restaurant, those are the kinds of things that can add up. And so we're going to cut that in half, and we're also going to make it easier to open them. Because right now, I'll tell you, you want to open a barbershop in New York City, you got to go to 7 different agencies, fill out 24 forms, and then attend 12 activities. That does not make it easy to open a barbershop. We need to actually follow the example of Pennsylvania, where they took an 8-week permitting process and made it just a couple days. And that's why we said we're going to have a mom and pop czar. We're going to increase funding for one-to-one small business services.
No more bureaucracy, man. Just cut the regulation. I hate libertarianism, but dude, this is where you cut the regulation. Why? Why appoint a czar? Just cut the regulations and let the small business figure it out. It's not the commanding heights of the economy, as Lenin would say. It's a mom and pop store. That should be basically anarchism. It's dumb to create more bureaucracy around this. Because he's not saying he's cutting what they have to go through already. He's saying he's just going to make it easier by appointing more people. And it's just, I really don't like that. But that's what you'll find with DSA types. They like bureaucracy. I don't like bureaucracy. I guess they really believe in it. And that, I get it, you know. But bureaucracy doesn't work. I think we know that at this point. It's always bad. It's always bad. Like single payer, right? Like when Bernie was shilling that. I'm not even opposed to a national base health insurance company, but we have to be realistic. It's going to be incredibly expensive because it's not going to be lean. because America can't do anything lean. It's going to be incredibly bloated. You have to do these things in a smart way or they're not going to work.
Because we have to make it easier to survive in this city. And city government has to understand its role and responsibility in that. Because I'm tired of politicians pretending like we're just bystanders to all these crises. You know, I'm texting out thoughts and prayers so the small business just closed, but actually my policies are helping it to close. We need to make sure that that's not the case any longer.
You know, I want to ask you, I'm asking you to define something, but when you answer it, I want you to, think about how you would define it to somebody if you was writing a rap. Like, now, I don't want you to rap what I'm saying. Listen to what I'm saying.
Look, I know you don't like the raps.
I know you don't like the raps. I'm just saying that the way you would approach a rap, the audience you're trying to talk to, and you would probably keep things on the ground.
This is where I lose the election right here.
How would you define being a democratic socialist? To just somebody that...
So some of my favorite songs, they start with an old quote. Mm-hmm. That's how a song might begin. And so for me, one of them is from Dr. King. Call it democracy or call it democratic socialism, there must be a better distribution of wealth for all people in this country, for all of God's children. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, to me, it's about dignity for each person. The person who gave me this language of calling myself a democratic socialist is Bernie Sanders. Mm-hmm. When he ran in 2016 and his relentless focus on income inequality, it taught me that things could be better than they were. So often when you're voting, it feels like you're voting between somebody who wants to wipe you off the face of the earth and someone else who wants to tell you to celebrate the crumbs that can't feed your neighbors. And to know that it could be more, that you could be voting for something, that has inspired me. And I think that, as a Muslim democratic socialist, I am used to bad PR and having to explain what all of these things mean. And what I've found, though, is when you actually get into a conversation, a lot of this is common sense, right? If I believe that every New Yorker should be able to live a dignified life and that it's city government's job to ensure that, New Yorkers will agree with me when I bring up the example of public education.
Free education, mm-hmm. free healthcare. Mm-hmm. What else?
Anything that's necessary, right?
Stabilized rent.
It's like when people, whatever you need to live in this city, mm-hmm. that should not be something you can be priced out of. And we agree with that when it comes to school. We agree with that with libraries, with sanitation, with the fire department. But there are certain things we've picked and chosen and said, you know what? You don't need that for housing. Mm-hmm. Or you know what? You don't need that for food. And I think that we can't let the market determine who gets to live that dignified life. This is not to say that it's city government's job to deal with everything, but for that which is necessary, we have to ensure that we are doing our part. And that's why I have said I'm going to freeze the rent for more than 2 million rent-stabilized tenants, because that's the mayor's power. Mm-hmm. The last mayor did that 3 times. This mayor raised the rent 9%. He wants to raise it again up to 8%. We have these tools. It's just a question of, do we want to do this? And I know why politicians don't, because there's a lot of pressure. I'm the candidate running to freeze the rent. Cuomo's the candidate running to raise the rent. That's why the landlords of those same units just gave Cuomo $2.5 million. The same landlords that say they don't have enough money to be able to freeze the rent just found $2.5 million to give it to him. The single largest check in this entire race. But it helps let people know that's what's on the ballot. It's straightforward. It's, do you want your rent to be the same or do you want it to raise?
I saw your rent was $2,300.
Going to Derek's point earlier, the zoning is a problem in this country. But also, dude, this rent-free stuff, I don't like it. There's no economist that agrees that this is good. And zoning is the problem because you could just build more housing. This idea of freezing rent, it sounds really nice, but guys, it does not work. No one will tell you it works. It's a bad idea. It's a bad idea. It's not his fault. He's not the one who's starting this conversation. It's just the status quo. But in regards to the democratic socialist thing, I think it's a good question. Why would he call yourself that? He led with an MLK quote. I'm not an MLK guy. I'm a Malcolm X guy. Let's hear it from Malcolm X.
This is exactly what I'm talking about, the slave mentality, the slave mind.
Malcolm X is the greatest American of the late 20th century, in my opinion. Malcolm X and Bush the father were great Americans. Pretty eclectic, huh? But look, stop using this word, democratic socialism. It's not good. It's toxic. It makes you look bad. I don't like you. I agree with like 30% of what he has to say. And I don't like him already because I have a prejudice against the DSA and the democratic socialist marker. It's a bad label. And it's a very basic point. Why would you label yourself something that can be misconstrued? Americans don't like the word socialism. In fact, I think most people don't like it outside of Europe. Stop using it. It's a bad image thing. And he's so good with image. Why would he continue to use this word and defend it? You know what people think of when they think of socialism? They think of Venezuela, Cuba, Soviet Union even. It's a bad word to use. Use a better word. You can focus group it. You can come up with a new word. I'm telling you. A lot of these positions would be way more popular if these guys did not use that word.
Yes, sir. 2,300 for a 1-bedroom in Astoria.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
It was 500 square feet?
It's not too much more than that. Let me tell you.
You know, it's interesting, right? Because Democrats have created all this new politically correct language for everything. Gender, sexuality, pregnant women. How come y'all haven't found a better way to discuss socialism? Why is socialism a dirty word when essentially all you want to do is take care of people?
I don't think it should be.
That's such a bad reply. Who cares what you think? I don't think it should be. It is a bad word. It is. So change it. Focus group it. It costs like $10,000 to run a cheap focus group. You can find a better word so easily. Change it. It is only a thorn in your side. It is a bad idea. This is my frustration with so many of these people that are challenging the Democratic establishment, is that they don't play politics. They don't want to win. Lie, cheat, steal, who cares? But get in. Derek says Salvador Allende. Salvador Allende is an interesting guy, man. My family had to leave the country because of Pinochet, but not for the classic reasons. Allende, we'll do a video on Allende someday. I don't like Allende, and I don't like the American narrative on Allende. But he was an interesting guy. He did a very, very interesting, underrated project in Chile called Project Cybersyn. Look it up. I saw this 4chan post on Twitter a few years ago. And they were saying that Latin America didn't come up with an invention. Salvador Allende invented Amazon in the 70s, okay? Look it up, Project Cybersyn. Look it up. We'll do a video on that. He died. He did die. Salvador Allende did die. Committed suicide.
I think it's actually a word that when you break down its meaning, like you just have done, is one that many Americans agree with. And we've seen that despite all the attempts, Bernie Sanders continues to be one of the most popular politicians in America. Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez, similarly. And they have both defined themselves in that same language. And I think it's that...
But I think it's because they tell... more so nowadays, instead of just leaning on the word socialism, they just tell people you should have free health care, you should have a free education, you should be able to make a livable wage. You know, they should increase the minimum wage. Like, those are just simple concepts that
This thing that Charlemagne just said, you guys know I don't like Charlemagne. This would cost $20,000 as a consultant for him to tell him, and he's telling it to him for free. He should internalize that. Dude, the people who have had success pushing dem social policies do not define themselves as such, or they rarely do, or it's a side note, but he's leading with it. This guy, look, Charlemagne, we can say whatever we want about him. He understands image because he's in radio, he's in TV, he understands image. And this is very, very good advice. And I hope anyone who wants to usurp the Democratic Party takes it. Image, image, image. Why did David Hogg fail? Image, image, image. Chiba says they shouldn't have to beg people to make their lives better. How does he sound? LMAO. Chiba, maybe they shouldn't have to, but that's the status quo. That's politics. Politics is, it's not the beauty of the possible or whatever. It's power. It is getting power. And to get power, you have to play the book. You have to play it the right way. You have to play the right tune. You gotta do it the right way. If you want to be a martyr, there's a lot of martyrs out there. Martyrdom is overrated. It's dumb. Martyrs rarely even result in what they want. Martyrdom is bad. You should chase power if you want to change things. And I hope they do chase power because we need the Democrats. I want Nancy Pelosi out of that party. I'm not a Democrat, but I want that woman gone because what she did during COVID when she showed us her ice cream, you better remember that. That was disgusting. You better remember that. One of the worst moments of that whole pandemic. That's unforgivable. She should be out of office. That was condescending and rude and messed up. Let's continue.
Are all socialism.
Yeah.
Well, for some reason, y'all still find yourselves tripping up over that word, or letting the other side use it as a dirty word.
I think it's because there are a lot of people making a lot of money in this moment who would want Americans to think that that's the only way life can be, and I don't hide this.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's how I see the world. It's the world that I want. It's one of dignity. And it's funny. There's this one guy who comments under almost every one of my tweets, and he's like, "He's a socialist." I'm like, "Yeah, it's in my bio." You know, this is who I am. And I think it's about being honest with New Yorkers. Because I've found, you know, Mayor Koch said this, that if you agree with me on 9 out of 12 issues, vote for me. 12 out of 12, see a psychiatrist. And I found that in New Yorkers, an ability to say, look, maybe I wouldn't call myself the same.
But why call yourself it? Chiba says, yeah, but I don't like how the host is hostile when the Democrats are trying to help his demographic the most, LOL. As I said, I'm a Malcolm X guy. I don't believe a lot of this DSA stuff myself. I'm not sure I agree with you there. I think it's maybe, but I think that the hostility is good, man, because it's like what I'm telling you is that what he just did for him by calling him out here in these 5 minutes would cost you so much money from a consultant to tell you, hey, let's drop this word. I'm telling you, it's expensive, and he did it to him for free. And if he were smart, tomorrow he would say, I'm dropping this label. I'm no longer Democratic Socialist. It would actually make him even more mysterious and unique and get more votes, I think. Be like, these are my policies. I'm not putting a label on them. What do you think? I think it's a good way of doing things. But yeah, I'm a Malcolm X guy. May 16th, Malcolm X Day. Rest in peace. Rest in peace to the greatest American.
Word. But I want the same things. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, you have to have a coalition that asks people of just one thing. We need to make the city affordable. We can have disagreement, we can have tension, but we have to have agreement on that one thing so that we can build a coalition that looks like the city of New York.
Now, sorry, but you are climbing the polls. Like, you just came out of nowhere, right? Why do you think the young people are riding with you?
You know, I think it's because people are hungry.
Because in the beginning, they didn't throw your name in the hat at first. It was just.
Look, let me tell you, I was sitting in a coffee shop in Astoria. This is right before we launched the campaign. Somebody in politics showed me a poll, and I was looking at the beginning of the poll, and they were like, "No, keep looking, keep looking," and then I was there at 1%.
Damn.
Really quick, Chiba. Yeah, but the viewers aren't seeing it that way. They are seeing it as reasons not to vote for him. LOL. The audience is highly reactionary. Trust me, I know. Chiba. Tell me who the audience is. I actually do wonder who the audience is for the Breakfast Club. I don't really know where this, like, who watches the Breakfast Club. I only watched it because he was on here, and I'm covering him for the election. But who is the audience for the Breakfast Club? If you know, let me know, man. I'd appreciate that.
They're like,
that's what you said.
Right.
Yeah.
How'd you make the poll rise?
Pause.
You know, I think just by being consistent.
Yeah.
You know, from the beginning of the race, from October 23rd, the first day, I said this was a campaign about affordability. I said this was a campaign about New Yorkers who have built this city, who are being pushed out of this city. And I said that I was going to do 3 things. I was going to freeze the rent. I was going to make the slowest buses in America fast and free. I was going to deliver universal childcare. And it got to the point where I can go to a rally and I can say, I'm going to freeze and the crowd will say rent. Buses fast and free, universal childcare. People know. And I think for too long, politics has become about a person as opposed to a platform. And New Yorkers see themselves in that. And, you know, growing up in this city, so many of the people that have helped to raise me, that I've grown up with, they haven't always seen themselves in our politics. They have, you know, they haven't voted in a lot of these elections. The last mayoral primary, 26% of Democrats voted. And most New Yorkers, when you ask them, when's the election? They'll tell you it's in November, not in June. Most people don't know about the importance of the primary. But I've been getting text messages from people that I've known for years and people that I've just met, just screenshots of voter registration, that I'm going to vote for the first time. Wow. And that's meant the world to me, because if we really want to protect our democracy, one of the best ways of doing so is that people see themselves in it. People see themselves as participants. You can't protect it at an intellectual level. You have to protect it at an everyday level. And ultimately, going back to your question about democratic socialism, it's about extending that democracy from the ballot box to the rest of our lives. If you get to choose your own leaders, why shouldn't you be able to choose the economic conditions that you're living in? Why shouldn't you be able to ensure you have that dignity? And I think that what's so exciting is...
That's a long hill to climb up on, man. You know why. You know why we can't choose our economic conditions? Because that's been chosen for you. Ride the tiger, fellas. You can't change these things. This is why a lot of people are frustrated, I think. Because I've accepted this. I've accepted that things will not change. You need to grow up, man. Anyone out there, focus on your money and focus on yourself. It sounds like a quote, but it's not. Because things are not going to change. They are not going to get better. I promise you. But they can get better for you if you focus on the right things. Chiba says 15 to 35, black, Hispanic, white, primarily hip-hop fans, so urban city centers. You think that demographic is reactionary? I don't know. I'm not a hip-hop fan myself. I like hip-hop, though. I like rap and stuff, but I wouldn't consider myself a fan. How are they reactionary? I'm not accusing you. I'm just asking. Literally, how are they reactionary? I'd like to know. I'm not in tune with the hip-hop community, man. It's not my vibe. I'm not a music guy, really.
As you said, a lot of this is powered by young people. You know, young people who so often political analysts will say, don't worry about them. They don't vote at the same rates. They don't come out. And it's been so exciting to see those same young people be part of the 34,000 volunteers we have. You know, it took us months to knock 150,000 doors in this city. Last week, we knocked that in 7 days alone. That's the level of momentum we're at, where people are just going all across the city. And my mother is one of these canvassers. Yeah. She has her weekly canvassing shift on Sunday. She's paired up with a 25-year-old who she complains walks too fast. They go up 6th floor walk up, and she goes through 10 consecutive not doors, not homes. And then when she finally meets a voter and they say they're going to vote for me, she says, that's my son. And it's that sense of everyone is a part of this.
They say they're not.
She don't even tell them. She don't tell them. She's like, I have my concerns as well.
But let me ask you, if you were the mayor and you see what's going on in L.A., how would you handle that problem? If there was protesters, they were, breaking stuff, looting, smashing police cars, vandalizing things. Of course, Trump sending the troops. How would you handle that if you were mayor of New York City and that actually happened here?
I think first and foremost, you call it what it is. It's authoritarianism. This is the Trump administration looking to arrest enough migrants that they can say they fulfilled their campaign promise of building the single largest deportation force in American history. And too often we think about it as just an attack on immigrants. It's an attack on the fabric of this country. And it's not just in LA. I mean, we have New Yorkers who have been arrested and detained today.
Terrible answer. Trump has reframed the riots. I covered it on another live. The riots are in his favor. This is something where you just say, I would put them down. Because you don't want to be Gavin Newsom, who has lost all chances of becoming president because of this. Even if he doesn't believe it, lie. As I said, lie, lie, lie. People don't like it. The images are bad. Lie. That's the frustrating thing. Lie. Get the power and then do what you want. But lie. The riots are bad PR, man. They're not good. You can reframe them. You can try to call them a movement or something. But what people see are riots. And they're not entirely unjustified in seeing that. And Trump has won that issue already. As I covered on the live. He won. He was incredibly smart. He did not do what George Bush did in 1992, who fed into the narrative. He flipped it. There's no way to take it back. Bad answer. Derek says, is that the same reason Allende got couped? Derek, you're making me want to get to do an Allende video. It's Americans tend to think, we'll give you the spark notes, okay? Allende was couped democratically, if that makes sense. It was actually an act of Congress. There was a lot of tension. The election was not entirely great that got him into power. Allende got couped, Americans like to say because of business interests and stuff. Not really. It's a little bit more complicated. They played a role in it. But, like Americans will be, oh, ITT couped Allende. Not really. IBM. It was more complicated. And it was an organic coup that happened down there. And look, I'm not a Pinochet fan for any stretch. But Allende's coup was a little bit more complicated. It had congressional approval, okay? The first attempted coup is what Americans describe somewhat, which was done by the far-right Chilean nationalists. But the second one, which was successful, was very different. Chiba says to defend their favorite rapper, i.e. R. Kelly fans still fanning and saying the girls want it. Bro, I can't. I haven't seen it. I haven't seen people do that, but I believe you, man. I watched the Boondocks, so I believe it. That's crazy. I mean, all right. I'll take your word for that. I agree with that. You say FDR type shit. FDR was a genius. I'm an FDR fan. Derek says U.S. congressional approval. No. Chilean congressional approval. I'm telling you. Look it up. It was not a U.S. thing. And the Congress in the U.S. was not all for the coup. The coup was praised in the White House, but the Congress is different. And it wasn't even praised publicly. And Allende was, and Pinochet is more complicated than people think. Pinochet was not supported by the United States. Pinochet is a much more complicated character than people think. Pinochet traded with Mao. He traded with Cuba up until there was some kerfuffles. Pinochet was a very, very, he's not the caricature that people think. He's a very different guy than what people think. Not saying he's good or bad. I'm just saying that it's not as black and white as Americans make it out to be. Yes, Chiba, FDR. FDR was a genius. I like some of the FDR programs. I like the CCC. I like the NRA. I think they were cool. I like the Works Progress Administration. But he had to be smart. You know, Chiba says, this convo reminds me of a Michael Brooks. He would always break down essay. Michael Brooks. Wow, that's the guy who died, I think. Yeah. Allende. Dude, look, Allende, we can do that for another video. It's a very interesting topic, but just look up what no one talks about with Allende. Look up this book. It's free online called Cybernetic Revolutionaries, and you'll read it, and it's one of the coolest things that Allende did or tried to do. And it's also kind of evil, but it's a really cool Latin American invention. Yeah, Allende is a complicated character. And Pedro Pascal is related to him, by the way. That's finally known now, but I said that 8 years ago when he first got famous. But yeah, Allende and Pinochet, much more complicated than it is. I think that Chilean history in particular is very difficult to understand for the United States because Chile is a very strange country. Ask any Latino. We are the Morocco of Latin America. We talk weird. We have a weird history. And Latin America in general is not very well understood. I don't really talk about it because people tend not to care about Latin America, but it would be cool to do a video on it.
You know, a few days ago marked 3 months since a Palestinian New Yorker named Mahmoud Khalil was arrested in his apartment building lobby, taken away from his pregnant wife, Noor.
Now, he's going to go into Khalil. I don't know if this is a bad decision to say, because I think that there is some support for the Khalil thing at a national level, that it was a weird thing to happen to deport this guy. Personally, you know, I don't really get into that conversation of the Middle East. I don't follow it closely, but just on the immigration front, I thought it was a very strange deportation. You have to say it's unique at the very least. Quarty says, love a stream dedicated to talking about Allende. That'd be cool. It would be cool, but people have to care about it. And people usually don't care about Salvador Allende. But yeah. So I don't know if this is a bad move. I think it's an interesting move. I don't know about the demographics of New York because there is a large Israeli supporting segment. But I don't even know if they support that deportation. That was a weird deportation. The guy wasn't convicted of a crime. So I've seen a lot of people talk about him and say that it was unjust. So maybe it is a good decision. I'm not sure.
And has since been in an ICE detention facility in Louisiana. It wasn't able to even witness the birth of his first child, Dean. And we have another New York City public high school student named Dylan, who was snatched at a regular check-in at Federal Plaza, is now hundreds of miles away from his mother and his two siblings. And this is personal for me because I got my citizenship just blocks from where those arrests are happening. Those blocks used to be my favorite part of New York City. It's where I got my citizenship, where I got married. And those are now the same blocks where when I took my father for his immigration interview this year, I hugged him so tight because I didn't know if I was going to see him in the afternoon. There are too many New Yorkers who are feeling that. And so I think you call this what it is. You also make clear that Trump is reversing historical precedent in that calling the National Guard is typically something a governor requests of the president. It's not something a president puts on a governor. And Kathy Hochul is someone who, as the governor of our state, has been able to fight Donald Trump and defend a lot of his potential attacks on this state, one of the first things I would do is work with her to make it clear that this has no room in our city. And our police force should not be assisting ICE in what they are conducting.
That's not a good idea. I'm telling you, don't antagonize Trump. That's what I would advise any Democrat to do. Because in a lot of ways, this usurping the Democratic Party is really finding the Trump of the Dems. And, dude, you can work with him. You can work with him. You can get a lot more done with him than without him. Imagine if he was just praising Trump for the good stuff and just omitted the bad stuff. When he gets in power, the money can come in. The Fed money can come in. And it can help out. Trump is from New York. He cares about the city on an aesthetic level at minimum. Do not alienate people that don't need to be alienated. I don't think that this is a problem with the way he's running the campaign. I think he's making it a referendum on Cuomo, which is a Democratic establishment. Wow. And Trump. And, dude, pick one or the other, man, because like you said, you're allies now, but maybe later you can fight him. But I don't see any benefit to fighting Trump. He's extremely popular at the moment, and you can I don't want to say use him, but you can work with him. You can work with him very well, very effectively. And that's just, I don't know. I just don't think it's strategic.
We recently saw arrests where the NYPD was then arresting a pastor and other New Yorkers who were observing ICE arresting migrants coming in for their check-ins. We don't need to be accomplices to authoritarianism. We need to show that there's another way of running this city and this country, and that's who I'm excited to be.
Could you explain to people why federal overreach is dangerous?
It's so funny to see Republicans for whom so long their rallying cry has been states' rights. And now here they are. They don't have a concern for that at all. It's the same way that they used to care about free speech. That's gone as well. Ultimately, these are principles they only hold when are convenient to them. And
that's what you should do. That's what every politician should do. When I have no power, I beg of you to give me some. When I have power, I spit on you when you ask me for some. That's power, man. Who cares if they turned on it? Because they're smart. Because they outplayed the Dems. That's just the facts. And you have to do the same to get elected and usurp the power from the Democratic Party. There's no other way.
And what's so dangerous about this is that we have a clear delineation of what is a federal responsibility, what is a state responsibility, but Donald Trump wants to make every responsibility his. He wants to run a country in a manner that is more befitting of an authoritarian state. And I think what's so concerning is he's looking at the example of someone like Nayib Bukele and saying that this style of leadership, of having mass prisons where we send so many people who we allege are criminals, no matter whether we can find it or not.
That's El Salvador.
Yeah, that's what he wants to bring to this country. And I think what we need are Democrats who are willing to stand up and fight that. We have a mayor right now who has wanted to fearmonger.
I think that I don't think he's entirely wrong. I think that Trump has fallen into authoritarian tendencies, not totalitarian. I hate when people mix those words up. I don't think he wants to replicate the El Salvador model. If you haven't been to El Salvador under Bukele, I highly recommend it. I was more of a fan when he started than where he is at now. But it's the safest country I've been to outside of China. Very safe country. Sure, there's been excesses or whatever, people will allege. I don't know of the reality of it. But I do think that there is something with this infatuation with Bukele, where what Bukele is doing, maybe it works at that micronation level, but American authoritarianism has to be in the style of FDR, of Abraham Lincoln, of George Washington, which is different because America is an Anglo country, and Anglo countries are Anglo, and Anglos have my brain rot, in my opinion. I know it's wrong to say, but they can't just get stuff done, in my opinion. So you have to do it this very, Abraham Lincoln. Oh, we're doing it. It's very soft. It's very soft, and then you go very hard, right? But yeah, I do think that this is accurate, but shouldn't be said. Work with him, man. Work with the guy. Jarek says the fallout of the Big Beautiful Bill will tank his popularity along with a confrontation with Iran. What part of the Big Beautiful Bill, man? I'm not opposed to the Big Beautiful Bill in terms of the funding, the fiscal policy. I think that these people who want to stop printing money, we're at a point where we have to keep printing it. I don't like the libertarian pushback. I don't like libertarians. I think that it's, I don't know what else is in the bill. You may be right, but at least that part, which is the most controversial, I don't hate. I think it's actually good. I think that we need to spend more money, print more money. And confrontation with Iran, I'm not sure it's going to happen. We saw the news today. I know what you're talking about. But who knows? Hopefully he's just talking a big game. But yes, if he confronted Iran, I think that people would be very angry. Very angry.
Around sanctuary city policy. This is a policy we've had in this city for decades. It's a policy that's been defended by Republicans and Democrats alike. It allows for the city to work with the federal government if someone is convicted on 170 serious crimes. What it says, however, is outside of those, there should not be that collaboration. And, you know, I'm sure, you know, you've heard of Kilmar, the man in Maryland, who was taken to El Salvador. If the city he was arrested in by ICE had sanctuary city laws, he would not have been able to be picked up. That's what we're preventing from happening.
Bad issue. Kilmar, it's been proven at this point that he was not a good guy. Even if the way the arrest was done is wrong, just don't bring that in. It's not popular. It's not popular. Frank says, gotta use $1 trillion military budget this year. Maybe. I do think that Trump does not like war. I hope that you're wrong, Frank. I hope so, because that would really suck, a confrontation with Iran. I would not like to see that. I would not like to see it. But it'd be good for the stock market. So there's definitely a lot of people that do want to see it. Derek says cutting social services will impact poor people across the country. Is that in the bill? Is that in the bill? That's interesting if it's in the bill, because Steve Bannon has said that we should defend Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. If that's in the bill, it's bad. I agree. Even though I'm not a fan of Social Security or Medicaid, cutting them is a bad idea at this point in time. I think you could probably get away with Social Security. I think you could. Oh, it is. It is, Derek. Okay. All right. If it were just Social Security, kind of be all for it, man. We got to cut Social Security. That's a Ponzi scheme. I don't like Social Security. Medicare, you know, a lot of people like Medicare. I hate Medicare and Medicaid because it's just such an American way of doing socialized medicine. We're just dude, just make the client pool bigger and do some sort of national basic health insurance policy. If you're going to do it, I don't think that at the basic level, I think at the higher level it has to remain private. But I don't see why. There's also other ways of solving this. I think it'd be interesting to have a lot of private clinics. That happens in Europe. If you go in Europe, to Europe, it's cheap at the public hospital, but it's very cheap at the private hospital too. If you like, I don't know, one time someone I knew cut their toe on the Tower of Belém in Portugal. We had to go get stitches. The public hospital, which we went to first, was like €10. And then the private hospital was €14 because it's so easy to do. So I think there's a way of solving it by deregulating a lot of the lower end medical stuff. But also Medicare and Medicaid, dude, just have some base level thing that everyone can use. Why not? Chiba says nobody's covering it because everyone is scared of it. I'm sure you're talking about the big beautiful bill. Yeah, I'm sure people are scared. Or you mean Iran? Yeah, people are scared of it. I've noticed that it's not being covered a lot. I think that he's faking this out, by the way. I don't think this is legit. I think this is very similar to, if you guys remember when John Bolton had that pad up that said like 24,000 troops to Colombia when we were in the first term, and it was about potentially invading Venezuela. It was a bluff, obviously. I think this may be a bluff too. But, you know, we got to hope that that's the case. We don't want a war with Iran. That would be very bad. And Derek says, yes, but the problem is that it isn't big enough. What do you mean big enough? The client pool that we have in the U.S.? Dude, I think 350 million people could fund a national health service. Yeah, it's pretty possible. I don't think it's that hard.
And still, with what we have in place, because we have a mayor who doesn't want to enforce it, because we have a mayor who wants to collaborate, still we see New Yorkers being picked up.
Let me ask you a question, right? Why is Donald Trump the Democrats' boogeyman? Because none of y'all are running against Trump. And to me, the biggest hurdle to the Democratic Party is the Democratic Party. The inaction of the Democratic Party over all of these.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, Derek says Medicare isn't big enough. Yeah, but Medicare is just such a weird way of doing national health insurance that I think you should just scrap it and do something new and be like, look, we're going to cover from stitches to broken bones. We'll do that and limit it at that. And then the rest, you can do some sort of public assistance for higher level stuff, but leave it mostly private. I think that would help. Because it's a problem. Chiba says you can read that later. Iran announced they tested 2-ton warheads. Only one weapon has the weight, and it's nuclear. That's basically confirmation, because why test a nuclear-only warhead? I will read about it later, Chiba. Don't bring the mood down, Chiba. I don't want a war with Iran, man. I don't want a war with Iran. But I gotta say, if there is a moment, this would be the moment they would choose it. Iran is like, I'm not saying the BB thing, right? Like, oh, 20 minutes away. No, what I'm saying is that Iran is extremely weak at the moment. Its proxies have been decapitated across the region. So if you were to go in, it'd be now. But you know what? That's kind of what they said about Syria. So Derek says national health services work if they are well-funded. Yeah, they do work if they're well-funded. Absolutely. But I think they have to be lean. I think they have to be well-funded and lean. That's very hard for the government to do. Be so lean, less bureaucracy. And that's why I think, dude, like I covered it in one of my videos where the way that Colombia fixed its national oil company was by allowing private companies to come in. And just by virtue of them being more efficient, it made the national oil company more efficient. You could do something like that, have like very cheap private clinics and have public clinics, and they could compete on price and quality. Maybe that could work. Chiba says, facts, I just turned 31 and I have a 2-year-old and I work in education. I'm not ready for it. I'm not ready to protest. Chiba, I got to tell you something. You're not going to protest yourself out of a war if it happens, man. You know, it was, it's not before my time. I was just a kid, but I remember the march against Iraq in London and the ones here. Did that stop them? Did not stop them. Look at Afghanistan. How long that took. There's no way of getting out of it, unfortunately. And education, that's pretty cool, man. 2-year-old. I'm glad you have a kid, man. People need to have more kids, especially intelligent people need to have more kids. It's good to have kids.
These years is the biggest hurdle for the Democratic Party now.
I don't disagree with you. That's part of my critique of Andrew Cuomo, is that he's the very kind of leadership that helped give rise to Donald Trump. You know, before Donald Trump was the president of this country, before he was a reality TV show host, he was a real estate developer in New York City. And he was someone who both parties had room for and time for. And I think that our ability to accommodate the very kind of real estate developers that have broken law after law after law is also part of what has given rise to an era of politics with no accountability. Mm-hmm. I mean, Andrew Cuomo had a video of Donald Trump playing at his own bachelor party. Like, that's the level in which all of this is enmeshed together. And I'm trying to chart a new course with this campaign alongside.
This is what I don't get is Cuomo is not bad because he's friends with Trump. Cuomo's bad because he's evil. That's pretty much it. He's just bad because he's evil. He happens to be friends with Trump, but like, why attack him on that? Why antagonize the president when you can just attack him on being evil? Because Andrew Cuomo's evil, you know? Derek says they do not care. See Iraq. Yeah, Derek, you're right. You're right. They do not care about protests. I hate protests. I think protests are bad. I think you only hurt yourself when you do that. Chiba says, I was a baby during that, and I swore that they did that shit. I was mad and ready for booms. I'm glad I was only like 7. I understand that, man, because the Iraq war was, I think that that's probably the reason America is at the state it's at mostly. It has to do with that. Iraq is the biggest problem that happened. And all that happened, as we covered on the other stream, in my tinfoil hat theory, because of Elian Gonzalez and the Democrats actually handing the election to Bush. I think that's my controversial tin hat theory. I think that they wanted that.
Thousands of New Yorkers for a politics that is clearly distinct from that of Donald Trump. And I think when New Yorkers are shocked at Donald Trump's record of cutting Medicaid, of trying to steal hundreds of millions of dollars from the MTA, of giving tax breaks to billionaires, of hounding the many women who have credibly come forward to accuse him. Those are the same things you could say about Andrew Cuomo. We don't need a reflection of that in New York City. We need someone who is the opposite of that. And as a progressive Muslim immigrant who's willing to fight.
Frank says you have some wild takes. I do. I'm very eclectic on my take. LOL. Protesting is bad. Protesting is bad because it doesn't help you. That's why protesting is bad, because you're expanding energy to fight something that has never changed because of protesting. This is what I really wish the Democrats understood. That power is power, and you have to get power. It's not about protest. Protests don't do anything. And in retrospect, people often say protests are responsible for stuff, but that's not why. Stuff happened because things changed at the top. Okay? It's never about protest. Protests are maybe a tool that can be used, but the protesting is mostly a LARP. Especially in the 21st century. It's a LARP. It's a LARP. And, yeah, I just don't think that you should protest. I think that protesting is a waste of your time. And I don't like to see people waste their time, especially if they don't see that it's not going to work. When did protesting ever work? It has never worked. Maybe the Peasants' Rebellion in like 1126 in England, it worked, but never again. Chiba says, we used all our goodwill now. All our enemies pointed to it as an excuse to do everything they want. We fucked up bad. Chiba, you're right. You're right. I have no justification for the Iraq War. The Iraq War was not a mistake. People say it was a mistake. It was not a mistake for the people that did it. Frank says, I was part of a local protest last night that pressured for change. It got effects immediately from City Hall. Frank, maybe you're right on the local level. I think protests actually do work on the local level. I'm talking more about national stuff. But on the local level, protests, because you are really close to these people, and geographically as well as electorally. So they could work on the local level. Not opposed to that. I wish we had some protests here against the Miami government. That'd be great. Our government sucks. Derek says if they are big enough, they are a threat to the gov. Derek, absolutely. Absolutely. But that never happens. And it's not possible. And the thing is, you're saying they're a threat to the government, but the reality is, and this is probably one of the best ways of understanding it, is that 100 trained special ops commandos can take on 1 million protesters. They can. You don't believe me? Look up Operation Red Wings. Okay, that's an analog we can use. See Bolivia? When do you mean in Bolivia? Do you mean when Evo was taken down or when he was brought back? Because that's really, I don't think that was protest. I think that was a lot of special interests from mineral companies as well as power imbalances in Bolivia. Because Evo, I'm going to keep this short because people hate when I talk about Latin America. Evo was the smartest of the red tide because he was able to isolate the right-wing elite into the eastern region of Bolivia and cut off their power, not literally, not like their lights, cut off their power. So Evo was very smart the way he did it. Chiba says, do you find it funny everyone online hyper-focused nationally but ignores local? It's like we are brainwashed to not solve the problem. It's telling someone to sweep when the house has bugs. Chiba, I completely gave up on all of that. I find it funny, yes, but what I mean is that I don't vote in any election, man. Local, national, I don't, because I just think they're all criminals at this point. So yeah, if people focused on local, Chiba, I swear I have experienced this at least 5 times in the past year. Ask people if they know how much sales tax is where they live. They don't even know that. That to me was a major realization where I was like, people are really walking around here not knowing why things cost $1.07 instead of $1. Okay. People are not good at this stuff, man. They're just not.
For the things I believe in, that's what makes me Donald Trump's worst nightmare.
But I saw you say that in the debate, you would be Trump's worst nightmare. But once again, why should that matter to anybody voting for you?
Exactly. Dude, I'm telling you, he should pay Charlemagne $30K for this consulting session. Great consulting there. Who cares? Who cares? We're voting for, and this goes also for the questions in the debate where they were asking him about the Middle East. Who cares? You're in New York. And that's how he should have flipped that question. He shouldn't even have answered. He said, I'm in New York. What do I care about the Middle East? It doesn't even make sense. I have no way of changing anything there as mayor.
Now, you're not running against Donald Trump.
No, but you are running against the authoritarianism that he's bringing to this city.
So you think Cuomo's an authoritarian?
No, I think that there's too many commonalities between him and Donald Trump's record.
Just call Cuomo evil.
And my point is that you don't want to have a mayor who has to pick up a phone call from someone who cut a $250,000 check to both him and Donald Trump. You want to have a mayor who's willing to fight for the city and have that be the thing that he's ultimately responsible for. And I think to your point, we also have to be honest about how we lost this presidential election. You know, New York is the state that had the largest swing in the country towards Donald Trump, 11.5 points. And it happened far from the caricature of Trump voters. It happened in the hearts of immigrant New York City. I went to Fordham Road in the Bronx. I went to Hillside Avenue in Queens. And when I asked New Yorkers there, almost all of whom were Democrats, who did you vote for and why? Many told me they didn't vote. Many told me they voted for Trump. And they told me they voted for him because they remembered having more money in their pocket 4 years ago for their rent, for their childcare, for their groceries, even for their Metro card.
They remember how they feel. Yeah.
And as insincere and ridiculous and horrific as we know Trump's policies to be, that is how people felt. Those are the decisions that they made. And when I asked these same New Yorkers, what would it take to bring you back to the Democratic Party? They said a relentless focus on an economic agenda. I said, what would you say to a candidate running to freeze the rent, make buses fast and free, deliver universal child care? I said, I'd vote for him. And that's when I introduced myself. And that's my point here, is that there are some Democrats like Andrew Cuomo who think that we went too far left in.
I think that this is a good acknowledgement, but it should be deeper. That Trump economy in the first term, despite how you feel about the politics, was the only good economy I've experienced in my whole life. And it pains me to think about it, because Taco Bell managers were making $100K. And you can say, oh, it was fake. It was done with printing money. Dude, that's why these issues are even coming up. And now we're trying to solve them in the other way. At least Zohran is, about providing stuff. But man, there was so much money in that first economy. And it had been after, okay, Obama's late end gig economy was okay. But man, that economy, it makes me want to cry, because, you know, I was born and then 9/11, just a few years later, and then Iraq, which then led to the housing crisis, which then led to Obama's poor recovery, and then led to the gig economy, which was a mediocre recovery. And then we finally had a moment where you could get a regular job and live, and it went away. It just sucked, man. Just sucked. Chiba says Vivek was so right, and they crucified him for it. Too bad he's not on our side. I think you mean the Dem side. Again, I'm not partisan here. Vivek had a lot of good rhetoric, but I never trusted him, actually. I never really found Vivek to be a sincere guy. I looking at his past, I was like, this guy seems kind of scammy. Derek says, inflationary policy bites on the back end. Derek, you're right, but I am kind of MMT pilled in a little bit, okay? America has the power to print everything, and they will. I don't believe in BRICS. I think BRICS is a scam. I think they will have that power for a long time. And we should use that power. Why not? To improve people's lives. I think it was done way too quickly during COVID, but inflationary policy, it does bite on the back end. But, bro, look, we have to start at this. This country's over. This country has like 200 years left in her, baby. That's it. That's it. This is a car on 150,000 miles. You're going to get 50 more out of it. But, you know, we might as well have a good time. You know, we might as well inflate some cool stuff into existence. Dude, if they can inflate, imagine when the U.S. is out and like they have, 1,000 years from now, like American ruins, like Roman ruins. Imagine if they like built some cool stuff for that. But maybe I'm too pessimistic. Maybe I'm not positive. I'm positive on the you level. You need to level up your life.
In how we ran a campaign. And my point is that we actually betrayed working class voters a long time ago. And it's time to own up to that and finally fulfill the promises that were made decades ago.
Well, that's interesting, right? Because, you say Cuomo and Trump have so many similarities, but Cuomo has been a career Democrat. And that's why I feel like anybody who is going to be the future of the Democratic Party, you do have to throw that old regime under the bus. Because it's not just Cuomo.
But that bus is going to be free.
Okay, sure. but it's not just Cuomo in the Democratic Party. It's a lot of old leadership.
Absolutely.
It's the Chuck Schumers. It's the Bidens. You got to throw all of that under the bus and run it over. And people have to hear you say that. Because I keep hearing y'all, you keep talking about Trump.
No, but
that is amazing. I'm so glad he said it. And that's what I was talking about. This crisis of not admitting policies that were wrong. You should attack Nancy Pelosi if you're going to attack anyone at the national level. You should attack Biden. You should attack the people who have destroyed this country for decades. You should attack them. What is the point of attacking both sides? Why start a two-front war? Those are the real enemy. Those are the people that are preventing you from gaining power. Those people. Donald Trump is not funding Andrew Cuomo in this campaign. Attack the people who are your actual enemy. That's what power's all about. Derek says true and real. Thank you, Derek. Thank you. Attack. Democrats like this could learn from Lee Atwater. There's a great documentary on him. You need to attack who you need to take down. Don't attack other people. Attack them. Focus on other people later. See how you can use those people to your advantage. That's what Trump did, and he's an extremely successful politician. It is all about power at the end of the day. Nothing else matters. It's about power. And power is very marginally about votes. Power is about elites, alliances, and stuff like that. It's very, very cynical, but it is the reality of it. And it is time that Americans wake up to the fact, you are controlled by something else. These are forces of history outside of your control. And to shift them is very difficult. But to shift them, it is not through this kind of populism is a lie. It's not real. Okay. It is through elites and votes. Elites get you votes. I rolled Thos says, but you won't vote. I will not vote because I don't believe in it. But it's not about me, right? It's about them. They want the power. I'm not here running for Congress. And if I were running for Congress, I'd run pretty well because I'm focused on power. Derek says, let Trump settle old scores with the establishment and take him on later. Exactly. And you know what's beautiful about life is that you never know where things lead. Because maybe even you're saying take him on later. Dude, maybe he becomes your best friend. Maybe he diverts a bunch of funding to New York because he's like, I like this guy. I like him. Trump is erratic enough to do it. And you have even more money for social programs, for cool stuff. You never know where things can lead. But you have to get power first.
Party has been just as ineffective and just as corrupt in a lot of ways.
Trust me, I hear you because I've been critical about the style of leadership that gave rise to Donald Trump. Is also a style of leadership within the Democratic Party. And I think for too long, it's been a party that has valued insider politics, pay your dues, the words and advice of consultants over the people that are Democrats themselves. And I do think it's time for a new generation of leadership.
Right, but that's why those people are in power. Because of that system. It's a machine system and you have to play it. They don't care if you're an actual Democrat. They care if you can play the system. And this extends beyond politics, dude. If you can play the game, you can make it in the corporate world. You can make it in any world. But if you show that you can play the game, that's how it works.
Cuomo would be the oldest mayor elected in New York City. I would represent a completely new generation. And I think it's important for that because it's not just about age. It's not just about vision. It's also about what has your record been and who have you been fighting for?
Derek said Huey Long moment. Brother, I love Huey Long. Huey Long is one of my heroes. And since you're interested in Latin American policy, you should read about Huey Long and what he did in Paraguay because he was one of the few people who called out the Chaco War while it was happening. And he had no reason to do it. Huey Long is a genius of power. Huey Long was probably taken out by FDR. I don't care what anyone says. I love Huey Long. The Ken Burns documentary on Huey Long is amazing. Huey Long was amazing. And that's one of the things that I hate about DeSantis is that DeSantis could have been that, but he wasn't. DeSantis was just DeSantis was the worst governor the state has had. And we had Rick Scott as governor. Okay. Huey Long is a great model for power, except for you need to have better security.
And is that distinct enough from what got us here?
Yeah, I just got a couple more questions. You said de Blasio was the best mayor in your lifetime for New York. And you gave 3 reasons. You said because he ended stop and frisk. Well, yeah, he ran on ending stop and frisk, taxing the rich, and funding universal pre-K. You said he got a lot of that done. How much of it did he get done?
Universal pre-K, I think, is one of the most shining examples of what city government can do, right? This is something that took tens of thousands of dollars off New York families' back.
I don't know why you would anchor yourself to de Blasio. I don't know if New Yorkers like de Blasio. I never liked de Blasio. I thought de Blasio was a very bad mayor, especially during COVID. But maybe even if he's popular in New York, this is smart, but I don't know. I think de Blasio was unpopular at the national level.
Backs and made it easier to raise a family here. You know, I'm tired of hearing New Yorkers tell me that they're going to settle down, and I know that the next sentence is going to include the words.
Derek says, Rick, Medicare, corruption, Scott. Derek, are you from Florida? Because that's the least of the bad stuff that guy did. And our Democrats are no better. Our Democrats are idiots in Florida. I would really, man, it's too bad. We're going to get Governor Byron Donalds in this state, and I hope he does well. Let's just say that. But this would have been the moment for the Dems to get their shit together in Florida and do something cool, but not going to happen.
Long Island or the suburbs, because they just can't make it work in the 5 boroughs. Part of making it work is making it easier to have childcare. You know, today, the average cost of childcare is $25,000 a year. That's more money than it costs to send that same kid to CUNY 18 years later. Those, I think, are accomplishments. Now, it's not to say that there is no critique of that time in office. I mean, I'm somebody who was on a 15-day hunger strike alongside thousands of working-class taxi drivers fighting that same administration for debt relief. And we were able to come to an agreement where we won $450 million in debt relief for those taxi drivers. And ultimately, I say this, though, because we have seen what's possible if we have someone focused on delivering it. And to me, the greatest mayor in New York City history is Fiorello LaGuardia, because he was someone who transformed our sense of the possible, and he put working people at the heart of his politics, and he did so while also confronting this rise in anti-immigrant hate all at the same time. And I think we need a mayor who has that ability to fight multiple crises at the same time and show what it means to be a New Yorker.
You said if you're elected mayor, Israel wouldn't let you in. And you mentioned some legislation, but would that legislation apply to you if you're actually mayor?
We've seen elected officials, even Congress people of this country, not be allowed into the state of Israel. And my point was, I've been asked this question many times, and I've said directly that I believe one need not visit Israel to stand up for Jewish New Yorkers. What I need to do is to meet Jewish New Yorkers at their synagogues, at their temples, at their homes, subway platforms, parks, wherever they may be, to hear their concerns and actually deliver on those concerns. And then when I have been asked about this, what I've also said is that even if I was going to make that trip, there is legislation that does not allow anyone who supports a nonviolent movement calling for the compliance.
Chiba said it best. I wish I knew what the fuck he was talking about. I almost forgot he was running for mayor. I don't even know why he addressed this. Just she should have just moved on. I don't like this. I don't know how it has anything to do with New York. This is just so bad. This is so bad. I don't like the answer. I don't even know what the right lie is here to get out of it. But he should just shift the conversation away from this. It doesn't make any sense. Derek said a lot of politicians belong in prison. Yeah. A lot of them do. A lot of them do, man. I'm sorry, Derek. I'm so distracted by it. This is so cringe. This is so bad. Why would you do this? It's just so bad, man. Don't talk about this topic. It's controversial enough. It has nothing to do with the position you're going to hold. Gorty says politically and environmentally, Rick Scott was horrible for Florida. Yes, he was. Yes, he was. Environmentally, especially. The sugar lobby is strong in our state.
Of the Israeli government with international law to be allowed into that state. And I say that to say that there has to be a greater recognition of what is going on. And the fact is, for me, my politics come back from a politics of the universal. I believe that freedom and justice and safety, liberty, these things have to apply to everyone for them to be meaningful. And that also includes Palestinians.
Why did
Shut up! Shut the fuck up! You have no right to take people
Shut up! Will you shut up? Shut up! Shut up!
Shut up!
I don't know why you even address this. This is so bad. I don't know if it'll cost him the election, but man, this is bad. This is not good to say. I don't even mean the content. I just mean even addressing it is bad. Why would you address this topic? It has nothing to do with what you're running for. Just shift it away. I hate that. I hate that. I hate that.
It often seems like elected officials care about what's going on in other countries more than they care about what's happening here in America. Because, you do realize it's hard to think about starving kids somewhere else when your kids are starving right now.
My focus is right here in New York City. This is a question that's been asked of me time and time again. And ultimately, I think it's actually a question that, as you're saying, is not actually in line with the top concerns of New Yorkers. Not even in line with the top concerns of Jewish New Yorkers. You know,
so why are you talking about it? Chiba said he might lose NY because of that large population of Jewish citizens. I understand that, but are they voting for a local office based on foreign policy? Does anyone do that? I've never met someone. Well, some people do that in Miami about Cuba, but that's very rare. Is New York like that? Because that's crazy. Even if you disagree with the guy on foreign policy, who cares? It's your local mayor.
You see in a poll, what are those top concerns? The number one is affordability. After that, it's childcare, it's elder care, it's discrimination. These are all New York City issues. And I think that we need to have a mayor who is focused on New York City. And that's why when I was asked in the debate, where's your first trip abroad going to be? I said, I'm going to be here in New York City. And then I was asked, followed up, are you going to go to Israel? And I said, one need not go to Israel to stand up for Jewish New Yorkers. And then I was asked, it just continues. But for me, the focus has to be the 5 boroughs. I mean, you are running to be the mayor of this city. This is a city that is losing hundreds of thousands of people in the last few years alone because they can't afford it. They're going to Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Connecticut, anywhere their dollar can go a little further. And we know that, as the saying goes, when white America catches a cold, black America catches pneumonia. That inequality is compounded for black New Yorkers. We lost 200,000 black New Yorkers in 2 decades, about 9%.
I think this is a very good point. This is something that I've long argued for because I saw a lot of Dems on the left criticize when the Tucker wing would talk about white sewer slide rates and stuff. And I always said, dude, I'm Hispanic. If the whites are not doing good, I'm not going to be doing good. I need them to get their stuff together or I'm not going to be doing good. That quote, when America catches a cold, black America catches pneumonia, is especially true. And I think that's something that's been neglected where, there is a problem and that problem is magnified for minorities in this country when things go wrong. When the economy's bad, it's bad for everyone, but it's bad for a lot more Hispanics and black Americans than anyone else. Native Americans too, I'm sure. So I'm glad he said that. Derek says people get mad about Israel. Yeah, they do. But and Chiba says, yeah, because it all goes back to how they feel here. A ton of people feel, quote, unsafe when you speak up for Palestine. I don't. But does it matter, though? I just don't get if it matters at a local level. Maybe you're right. Maybe I'm completely off base here. I just don't see how this... I think it's bad. I don't know. Derek says, down the tube we go. What tube? We playing Mario?
Of the city's population of black New Yorkers. From 2010 to 2019, nearly 20% of black children and teenagers had to leave the city. And that is a crisis that has to be focused on. That would be at the heart of what my administration would do.
Yeah, I don't understand why conversations about affordability, free healthcare, making buses free, freezing the rent on rent-stabilized apartments, why is that considered far left?
Come on.
I'm just saying, why is it?
It's common sense.
But why can't y'all message that better? I think you got to get rid of that word socialism. My man Killer Mike used to tell Bernie.
Chiba says, yeah, people are stupid, bro, LOL. Dude, that's a level of... Because it's not exactly stupid. Because you have to be thinking about foreign policy to oppose your local mayor based on how they feel about the Middle East. This to me is the equivalent about caring about the rights of Zimbabweans in South Africa and you're the mayor of Biloxi. I don't know. Even if there's Zimbabweans there and South Africans, should they even care about that at the local? I get at the national level. But maybe you're right. Maybe I'm overthinking it. Maybe I'm giving people too much faith. But it's just weird. It's a weird issue to bring up in a local race.
Sanders to use the term compassionate capitalism. Or maybe just talk about what it is you want to do constantly instead of getting caught up in those labels.
I mean, I think it's both important to tell people where this belief comes from, but what I always foreground is what this belief will mean for someone. You know, people want to know, how are you going to help them in their life, in their struggle? The reason we focused this entire campaign on affordability is that's what New Yorkers told us. When you ask them, what are you struggling with? They'll tell you rent. They'll tell you childcare. They'll even tell you public transit, because I know to many people, $2.90 doesn't feel like a lot. 1 in 5 New Yorkers cannot afford a Metro card. That's the state of inequality in this city. While income inequality has declined in the country, it's increased in New York City.
I like this theme, income inequality, but I think it has horrible branding. I like it. I think it's very good. It's very old left. I like the old left. They were good on a lot of stuff. But I just don't like the branding. Income inequality is too complicated. It has that alliteration, so income inequality, but they're both weak words. Inequality is a Latin word. Income, ingresos. Yeah, I think it's a Latin word too. It's very weak. It needs to be stronger. It needs to be stronger because it's an important issue. You don't make enough would be better, I think. Derek says people feel called out. Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, dude, look, I'm half Venezuelan. I don't feel called out about the Venezuela stuff. Maybe it's just me being like, yeah, but I'm not a gangster, so they're not talking about me. And maybe that's even a bad instinct. Maybe I should care because they'll apply it to everyone. But I don't know. Maybe I'm just too... maybe problems with me. You might be right. People feel called out. I guess I just don't. I have very thick skin, and it doesn't let me see that point of view.
This is the wealthiest city in the wealthiest country in the history of the world. And so, to what you're saying, these are common sense policies, and also when they're polled, they even sometimes have supportive majority of Republicans because they speak to what people are actually going through.
That's it. All people want is some more money in their pocket, and they want to feel safe. Look, that's it.
Well, if they want to support you, how can they go out and support you?
Well, what I would tell them is come to ZohranforNYC.com. Don't donate to us. We've already raised the maximum we can spend in this campaign, but do give us something more valuable, which is your time. We're building a team of 34,000 people, New Yorkers from all walks of life, knocking on doors, talking to their neighbors. Come on out, canvas. It would be a joy to have you. And I would also say that if the 3 of you want to come canvas, we'd love to have.
I like not asking for money. That's very nice. I always hate when they ask for money from normal people. Reminds me of evangelicals. If you've ever been to an evangelical service, it's very, very gross how they ask for money.
Have you as well?
Thank you.
Well, we residents in New Jersey, but...
Oh, come on. So look, just bring that corporate tax rate. Bring that corporate tax rate over from New Jersey.
Man, don't say that.
When's the election?
June 24th, but early voting starts June 14th, and we're confident we can win this, but only with the help of New Yorkers.
Well, good luck.
Thank you so much.
Zohran Mamdani. I appreciate it.
Mamdani. Hit it one more time.
All right. Zohran Mamdani.
There we go.
My goodness. My goodness.
Let's get the polls up. There you go.
Wow.
It's the Breakfast Club. Good morning.
Wasn't a disaster. The Israel thing, I think, might have negated a lot of it. I don't think he's going to win, man. I think he plays a role for these people to point at as the bad guy.
So say good night to the bad guy.
And
come on. The last time you're going to see a bad guy like this again, let me tell you.
And it's a problem, Derek says prosperity gospel. Derek, I agree with you on that. I think that noblesse oblige and all that stuff was very good. I'm going to go here. Derek, let me show you since you were interested. Read this book, please. You will really like it. This book right here. Highly recommend it. If you want to learn more about Allende. It's very good. It's free online. Look up a PDF. I don't know if it's supposed to be free, but it's free online. Highly recommend it. Very worth reading. But yeah. That's all we got today. I'm glad we went through the whole thing. That was pretty fun. Yeah! Let's read our last comments here. Chiba nailed it. Prosperity gospel prevalent in Baptist and evangelical communities. Derek says trust. I trust you'll read this book, man. You'll like it. It's very short. I think it's like 200 pages at most. But yeah, I'm glad we have some Huey Long fans in here. I'm glad you guys had a good time. I appreciate that. Please like, comment, subscribe, share with everyone you know. I'd appreciate it. I'm going to be putting up clips of this throughout the weeks. And maybe tomorrow we can stream again about Zohran. I think it's a very interesting topic. And I don't know. Let's see if he gives us some news. Otherwise, we'll stream about something else that's cool. Because streaming is fun.